Everything seemed normal. That's what haunts me the most when I look back. Not the moment everything fell apart, not even the message that started it, just how calm and ordinary the night had been. If you'd asked me earlier that day how things were between Sarah and me, I would have said fine. Good even. Nothing flashy, nothing fiery, just a steady hum of married life. We had a rhythm, routines, a sense of safety that, at the time, felt like love. We were at her sister Megan's place for dinner. A big, slightly chaotic gathering that smelled of turkey, sweet potatoes, and childhood memories. Megan's house always had this warm, lived-in messiness that made everyone feel welcome. Coats thrown over the banister, kids running barefoot through the hallway, half-eaten cookies on every surface. The kind of place where no one cared if your socks didn't match or if you accidentally knocked over a glass of juice. Sarah floated in that space like she belonged to it more than I ever did. She was laughing, holding Megan's youngest on her hip, teasing her brother-in-law about his new beard, tossing her hair in that way that said she wasn't really thinking about how she looked, and still somehow managed to look perfect. I watched her from the couch, plate balanced on my knees, listening to her banter about holiday plans and PDA drama like it was the most important conversation in the world. She touched my shoulder once. Just a brief brush as she passed behind me with a second helping of mashed sweet potatoes, and I remember thinking how warm her hand felt. How real. How familiar. That's what kills me now, that sense of comfort, the easy way I fit into the background of her life without ever questioning whether I still belong there. After dinner, we helped clean up. Sarah and Megan disappeared into the kitchen, laughing about something I couldn't hear. I stayed back with Megan's husband, who turned the TV to a basketball game and asked if I was still working crazy hours. I told him not lately. Things had slowed down. He nodded like he understood, but his attention was already back on the screen. I didn't mind. I liked the quiet, the harmless background noise, the illusion of peace. When we got home, the air outside was crisp, the kind that makes your breath visible. Sarah slipped her arm into mine as we walked up the steps, pressing close like she needed the warmth. I unlocked the door. She kicked off her boots in the entryway, muttered something about eating too much stuffing, and headed straight to the bathroom. I collapsed onto the couch, unbuttoned the top of my shirt, and picked up the remote. I wasn't really watching, just letting my mind float. That's when her phone buzzed. It was sitting face up on the coffee table, screen lighting the dark like a candle flame. I glanced out of habit, no real intention behind it, just the same automatic reflex we all have around a glowing screen. I expected to see some message from Megan or a group chat about recipes. Maybe a reminder. But no. Just one line, clear as day. You still smelled like me tonight. Can't wait for Thursday. Same time? I read it twice. 3 times. Something inside me cracked on the third read. Not a clean break, more like a hairline fracture down a wall you thought was solid. The number wasn't saved. No name. Just the message. Casual. Confident. Like it belonged there. My first thought wasn't rage. It was confusion. Disbelief. The kind you feel when the fire alarm goes off but there's no smoke. I looked toward the hallway, listened for the water running in the bathroom. I told myself it had to be a mistake. A wrong number. A joke maybe. But even as I tried to explain it away, my hand was already reaching for the phone. One swipe up and I was in. She'd never changed her passcode. Same one since we got new phones 2 years ago. It opened instantly. I went to her messages. Everything gone. No threads. No history. Just that one conversation. Just that one goddamn message, floating in the middle of a clean white screen like a drop of ink in water. I stared at it. My thumb hovered, unsure what to do next. I didn't scroll. There was nothing to scroll. No evidence, no trail, no context. Just silence. I could almost hear it, this buzzing void where her secrets used to live. She came out a few minutes later, hair damp, cheeks flushed from the shower. She smiled at me. That same smile I'd seen 100 times. I slipped the phone into my robe pocket like it was nothing. Like I hadn't just seen the iceberg under the surface. I'm beat, I said, or something like that. She nodded and wandered toward the bedroom. I followed, my heart a solid weight in my chest. She pulled on one of my old t-shirts, crawled under the blanket, and sighed like the day had been long but good. I lay beside her, my back to her warmth, gripping the edge of the mattress like it was the only thing keeping me from drowning. She slept soundly, peacefully, like someone with nothing to hide. I stared at the ceiling for hours. I didn't move, didn't blink, just waited for the sound of morning to come and tell me that what I'd read wasn't real. But it was. And nothing, not the dinner, not her laugh, not the way she touched my shoulder, could undo it. Something had begun that night. Something I couldn't stop. Vi waited until just after 3 in the morning. The room was still, dark except for the faint glow from the streetlight leaking through the blinds. Sarah was asleep beside me, her breathing slow and even. I watched her for a moment, trying to understand how someone could rest so easily while I felt like I was being pulled under. I listened for the steady rhythm of her breath and waited until I was sure she was deep in sleep. Then I slipped out of bed, careful not to make the mattress creak, and padded down the hall in bare feet with her phone still tucked in the pocket of my robe. I locked the bathroom door behind me and turned on the fan to cover the sound. I didn't need the light. The glow from the screen was enough. I sat on the edge of the tub, opened her phone again, and stared at the empty message history. I checked everything. Messages, emails, call logs. Nothing. Not even old spam. It was too clean. Too intentional. The kind of clean that only exists when someone wants to make sure there's no trace of where they've been. Sarah wasn't careless. If anything, she was obsessively meticulous about details. The kind of person who had color-coded labels in the pantry and calendar alerts for oil changes. But this was surgical. It wasn't the kind of error you make in the middle of a passionate mistake. This was a cover-up. A routine. A practiced one. I kept going, even though I already knew what I was going to find. Nothing. No photos. No saved numbers that didn't belong. Her social media looked the same as always. Filtered shots of dinners, kids' events, a few pictures of the two of us smiling like we belonged in a brochure. But it was all hollow now. I felt like I was watching our life through glass, knowing it had already shattered and I hadn't seen it fall. The number that had sent the message wasn't saved under a name. I copied it into my own phone and ran it through a couple of messaging apps to see if it had a profile picture or anything attached. It didn't. Just a string of digits, meaningless unless you knew what to look for. I forwarded the message to myself and then deleted the sent item. Then I saved the number in my own contacts under something harmless, roofing estimate. The irony wasn't lost on me. After that, I wiped her phone screen clean of fingerprints, powered it off, and returned it to the couch where I'd found it earlier. I stood there for a long moment, just looking at it lying there so innocently. It buzzed again after a while, almost like it was mocking me. I didn't check the message. Not yet. I wasn't ready to know more. Not until I had control. When I climbed back into bed, Sarah rolled slightly toward me in her sleep and mumbled something I didn't catch. Her hand landed on my arm and stayed there. I didn't move. I lay there with my eyes wide open, tracing the pattern of the ceiling plaster in the dark and wondering how many times she'd done this before, laughed with me, touched me, sat across from me at the table, while carrying this secret inside her. By the time the sun began to rise, I had made up my mind. I wasn't going to confront her, not yet. I needed to know what I was looking at. I couldn't just throw accusations into the air and let her deny them with that cool, practiced calm she used whenever something uncomfortable came up. She was too smart for that. Too measured. If I pushed too soon, she'd twist it. She'd make it about me, about paranoia, stress, misinterpretation. I couldn't afford to be wrong. She stirred just as the light crept across the floorboards. I closed my eyes and pretended to be asleep. She shifted, sat up, and I felt her lean over me to kiss my shoulder. Her lips were warm. Familiar. It made my stomach twist. She got up and padded out to the kitchen. I heard the cabinets open, the coffee maker hiss to life. I waited another 5 minutes, then followed. "Morning," she said, smiling as she handed me a mug like everything was exactly as it should be. I took it, nodded, let the silence hang. She leaned against the counter, sipping her own coffee, and said something about how nice it had been at Megan's last night. How the kids had behaved for once, How her sister's new cranberry sauce recipe was actually edible. I nodded again. Said something bland in return. My eyes were on her, but my mind was still in that bathroom at 3 a.m., staring at a message that hadn't been meant for my eyes. She didn't notice anything different. That was the first clue. Not the message, not the silence, not the deletion of her entire phone history. It was her face that morning. Relaxed. Smooth. The face of someone who believed their secret was still safe. Someone who believed they were still 2 steps ahead. I let her speak. Let her pour more coffee. Let her kiss me on the cheek and slip away to shower. And as soon as the bathroom door clicked shut, I was already reaching for my laptop. As soon as I heard the water running behind the bathroom door, I sat down at the kitchen table with my laptop, the same table where we used to plan vacations and argue over bills. The coffee sat untouched beside me. I opened a browser and started searching. My hands shook a little, but not from nerves, not exactly. It was more like clarity, like a current had started moving beneath my skin and now all I could do was follow it. I took out my phone and pulled up the number. I copied it again, tried a reverse lookup through some paid service I'd used once for work. It came back blank. No registered name, no business. Just a city and state, ours. That figured. Whoever it was, they weren't careless either. But I kept digging. I tried WhatsApp. Nothing. Signal. No result. Telegram. The number had a profile picture, just a vague shot of a beach at sunset, but it was active. The last scene was recent, a few minutes ago. Whoever it was, they were awake, online, and probably still thinking about my wife. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. I hesitated, unsure how far I wanted to go. Then I made a decision. I opened my own Telegram account and sent a message to the number. Just one sentence. Still thinking about her after last night? I sent it without overthinking. It was a test of them, of me, of the reality I still didn't want to fully face. The reply came within seconds. Always. She's impossible to forget. No hesitation. No confusion. Just confidence. The kind you have when you know exactly who you're talking to. My chest tightened. I read it twice, then deleted the entire thread before I could respond again. This wasn't just flirtation. This wasn't an accident or a misunderstanding. There was a pattern here, something well-worn and familiar. This person spoke like they had said it before. Like there had been many nights. Many messages. Many meetings. I sat there in the stillness of our kitchen, surrounded by all the things we'd built together, and it felt like I was inside a stranger's home. Sarah came out of the bathroom a few minutes later, towel wrapped around her hair, wearing one of those soft sweaters she always said made her feel cozy but professional. She kissed me on the head and asked if I'd be okay locking up after she left. I nodded. My mouth was dry. I think I said something like, "Sure, have a good day," but I honestly don't remember. She left with her travel mug and tote bag, waving once from the driveway before she pulled out. I watched her car disappear down the road. Then I closed the laptop, cleared the browser history, and went upstairs to the attic. There was an old iPhone tucked in a box labeled work stuff, along with chargers, old receipts, a cracked leather notebook. I hadn't used the phone in almost 2 years, but it still powered on when I plugged it in. I wiped it clean, then popped in a backup SIM I kept for travel. I didn't even remember why I kept it. Maybe a part of me had always been waiting for something like this. When it finally booted up, I installed the same apps. Telegram, Signal, WhatsApp, even a burner email. I created a new contact using the number that had sent that message. And then I crossed a line. I pretended to be Sarah. It started with something simple. "Hey, I've been thinking about Thursday. Still good to meet." It felt disgusting. The lie of it. The weight of it. But I needed to know. I needed to stop being the man on the outside looking in. The response came fast. Too fast. Goodness. I can't stop thinking about it. Same place. I didn't answer right away. I walked circles around the kitchen while the message stared back at me like a loaded gun. Yeah. Same time too. Of course. I'll bring that thing you like. I felt sick. And still, I kept going. You picking me up again? Yeah. Back lot of the college okay? That part made me freeze. Sarah worked at the college. She'd been there for almost 6 years. Taught freshman writing. Stayed late grading papers, held extra office hours, attended committee meetings. The college was her second home, or so she always said. And apparently, her rendezvous point. I didn't respond after that. I couldn't. My hands were cold, my stomach tight. I turned the phone screen down and just sat there, breathing through clenched teeth. The pieces were falling into place too fast now. All those late work nights. The last-minute errands. The unexplained Lyft rides. The new underwear I found in the laundry that I never saw her wear. The empty perfume bottle she claimed had spilled in her bag. I had asked her about it once, and she'd laughed it off. God, I'd laugh too. I reached for my coffee, but it was cold. I hadn't taken a single sip. Sarah texted me from her real number around 11. Hope your morning's going okay. Love you. I stared at the message. My thumb hovered over the heart reaction, the one I always used. The same one she probably used with the other person too. I didn't respond. Not this time. I didn't answer her text. I read it once, let it sit on my screen, and then locked my phone. I told myself I wasn't ignoring her, I was observing. I was studying the way she moved now. The way she spoke. The gaps between her stories. And every word, every glance, every late return home felt suddenly loaded. Like everything was part of a performance I hadn't realized I was watching. She called around 1 p.m. I let it ring. No voicemail. She never left voicemails. Just a second text, a quick, call when you can, smiley face, with that stupid smiley she used in everything, messages to me, her mom, her students. That smiley that looked like nothing, like a placeholder for sincerity. I sat at the dining room table with the old iPhone in front of me. The message history was still there, the pretend conversation between her and whoever they were. And I kept reading it. Over and over. That part about the backlot. Her excitement. The familiarity. None of it read like a fling. It read like a routine. A second life. I stared at the phone until my eyes hurt. Then I made a decision. I needed to see it myself. I needed proof, not words, not theories, not messages I could later convince myself were out of context. I needed to witness it, to look the truth in the face and not flinch. Because part of me still didn't believe it. Not really. My brain was fighting it like a body rejecting a transplant. I needed something undeniable. In the garage, I found the old DSLR camera we used on vacations. I hadn't touched it in years, but it still had battery left. I packed it, the burner phone, and my own phone into a messenger bag. Then I waited. Watched the clock. Watched the street. When Sarah came home that night, she acted exactly the same. She walked in carrying grocery bags, her voice light and casual. I got that pasta you like. Thought we'd do an easy dinner. I helped her put things away. I smiled when she touched my back. I listened to her talk about a student who plagiarized a paper and claimed he didn't know what plagiarism was. She laughed and I laughed with her. I kissed her temple while she stirred the sauce. I played the part. The next morning, she mentioned it casually over toast. I might have a meeting Thursday afternoon. Department stuff. Jessica's being weird again. I didn't blink. I just chewed, nodded, asked if she needed me to pick up anything for dinner. She smiled. Nope, should be back around 7. I kissed her before she left. Told her to have a good day. She kissed me back and said, "You too." It was almost boring, the way we functioned. Like a well-oiled machine running off muscle memory. That afternoon, I dug out a hoodie and a baseball cap, dark clothes that wouldn't draw attention. I scoped the parking lot she'd mentioned in the messages, the one behind the college's west wing. It was a faculty overflow area, mostly empty in the afternoons. No cameras. No security guard. Just a few old light poles and cracked pavement. Perfect for secrets. I parked 3 blocks away Thursday afternoon, well before her usual class time ended. I walked the rest of the way, keeping to the sidewalk, staying close to fences and trees. The camera was in my bag, ready. The burner phone fully charged. I hadn't messaged again. I didn't need to. She thought her lover was texting her. They'd already agreed. I waited behind an old maintenance shed where I had a clear line of sight to the lot. It was cold. The kind that crept through your sleeves and sat in your spine. I shifted from foot to foot, checking my watch too often. Then, just before 4, her figure appeared. I knew that walk. Confident. Not rushed. She glanced at her phone, then up the lot, like she was waiting for someone. She looked good, a soft coat, tight jeans, that same familiar scarf I'd bought her last Christmas. She leaned against a car, smiling slightly. Then the Ford pulled in. What? Familiar. It slowed as it neared, then stopped beside her. Sarah didn't hesitate. She stepped forward, leaned in the driver's window, and kissed whoever was inside. Slow. Certain. Not a greeting kiss. Not nervous or guilty. This was a kiss with history. I raised the camera. My hands weren't steady, but I managed the shot. A few, actually. Just enough. The door opened. She got in. The car pulled away. I stood behind the shed, bag on my shoulder, stomach in knots. My ears were ringing. I wanted to move, to scream, to do something, but I just stood there, watching that car disappear down the road like I hadn't just watched my wife disappear with it. I walked back to my car in silence. Drove home in silence. Sat in the driveway until the sun dipped low enough to set the windows glowing orange. My hands were clenched on the steering wheel, jaw locked. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just breathed, long and shallow, through a mouth that couldn't seem to form words. At home, I moved like I was underwater. I took her things from the bathroom, the closet, the dresser. I packed them methodically. Folded the clothes neatly. Paused once when I found the old anniversary card I'd written her last year, tucked behind a book. I placed it on top of the suitcase. I set everything by the door. Changed the alarm code. Then I made tea and waited in the kitchen. It was nearly 7 when her car pulled into the driveway. I heard the familiar sound of the garage door opening, the shuffling of keys, the echo of her heels on the concrete. I didn't move. I just sat at the kitchen table, both hands wrapped around a cooling mug of tea, listening to the house hold its breath. The door creaked open. She stepped inside, cheerful, talking before she even saw me. "Hey babe, sorry I'm late. Traffic was insane." She stopped. The suitcase by the door was impossible to miss. Her eyes found it almost immediately. Then they found me. Her smile faltered just slightly, but she caught it, tried to recover. "What's going on?" she asked. I didn't answer right away. I just looked at her. Really looked at her. The makeup, the coat, the faint smell of unfamiliar perfume that didn't quite match what she usually wore. It was subtle, but now I noticed everything. I watched her expression shift, confusion to concern, then to something guarded. "I think you know," I said. She opened her mouth. Closed it. Her eyes darted to the suitcase again. "Is this some kind of joke?" I shook my head once. No humor left in me. I gestured to the suitcase. "That's everything you'll need for now. I've changed the code. You won't be coming back in." Her face went pale. "Wait, what is this? Can you just talk to me?" I stood up slowly. Not out of rage. Just exhaustion. Bone deep, final exhaustion. "You kissed her in the car," I said. "The white Ford. The college lot. You kissed her like you've done it before. And you left with her." Sarah froze. Not even a flinch. No gasp, no denial. Just a full-body stillness, like someone realizing the last move on the board had already been played. "You were there?" she said quietly. I nodded. For a long moment, she didn't say anything. Her hands opened and closed at her sides. I waited for the excuses, the apologies, the part where she would try to twist the truth into something palatable. But all she said was, "I didn't mean for it to happen." I laughed once, not cruel, not loud. Just a bitter exhale of disbelief. "But it did. And it kept happening. You made sure it did." "It was never about you," she said quickly, stepping forward. "You didn't do anything wrong. I needed something I couldn't explain. I didn't know how to tell you." I held up my hand. She stopped. My voice was low, even. "I don't care why. Not anymore. I'm not here to argue. I'm not here to understand. I'm just done." Tears sprang to her eyes. She stepped closer again. "Please, Can we just talk about this? Don't throw away everything. I'm not throwing anything away, I said. You already did. I'm just not picking it back up. The silence stretched. She stared at me like she didn't recognize the man standing in front of her, and maybe she didn't. Maybe I didn't either. I had been the man who held her hand at dinners, who laughed when she laughed, who trusted her. That version of me was gone now. Burned out in the cold light of truth. When she realized I wasn't going to change my mind, she turned toward the suitcase. Picked it up slowly, hands trembling. At the door, she paused and looked back. I didn't plan to hurt you, she said, voice thick. I met her eyes. You just didn't care enough not to. She flinched at that. Then the door closed and she was gone. I stood there for a long time. The silence in the house was massive, a vacuum after the storm. But it wasn't peaceful. Not yet. 2 days later, I filed the paperwork. Divorce. No dramatic speech. No confrontation. Just clean lines, black ink, the kind of thing you finish in a beige office with a clipboard. She texted. Called. At first, the messages were tearful, begging for a conversation. Then came the apologies. The explanations. Then the blame, the confusion, the bargaining. I answered none of them. I moved out of the house by the end of the month, into a quiet rental across town. Small, a little drafty, but mine. Clean walls. No memories hiding in corners. I brought almost nothing with me, just some clothes, books, my old desk, and the camera. The camera I still hadn't touched since that day. I kept it in the back of a drawer, not out of sentiment but because some part of me needed to know that it happened. That I hadn't dreamed it. Weeks passed. Then one morning I received a letter in the mail. Handwritten. No return address, but I recognized the neat cursive immediately. Jessica. I stared at it for a long time before opening it. The first paragraph was full of apologies, reflections, and phrases like, "It was never personal," and "I never intended to cause harm." I stopped reading after that. I didn't need her to explain the mechanics of betrayal to me. I'd already lived through the sharpest part. I dropped the letter in the trash and made breakfast. Eggs, toast, black coffee. Silence. Sometimes, when I look back, I don't think about the kiss, the parking lot, or even the suitcase. I think about that night at her sister's house. The laughter, the turkey, the warm hum of familiarity. And I remember sitting beside the woman I loved while she smiled across the table, already belonging to someone else. That's the part that sticks. Because I was never the man she ran to. I was just the one she left behind. And this time, I didn't follow.